The human female sat cross-legged on the frozen ground, her breath forming small clouds in the bitter air. Around her, 3 small Vorthani cubs huddled beneath what she called her jacket, a peculiar fabric shell that apparently served as portable warmth for these strange bipedal creatures. "Well, this is just fantastic," she muttered, pulling the cubs closer to her body heat. "Absolutely brilliant, Hazel. Find the cute alien babies, get emotionally attached, and now you're basically a walking nursery in the middle of nowhere. My name is Corveth, and I am what these humans call a xenobiologist. Though honestly, watching this particular specimen made me question everything I thought I knew about their species. According to our data files, humans were supposed to be selfish, territorial, and primarily concerned with their own survival. Yet here was this one, risking hypothermia for 3 abandoned cubs that weren't even her own species. The cubs, for their part, seemed completely unaware of the cosmic joke unfolding around them. They made soft, chittering sounds, their silver fur gradually warming under the human's jacket. Their large, dark eyes blinked slowly, a sign of contentment among my people. "Oh, don't you dare give me those looks," Hazel said, though her voice had gone decidedly softer. "I know what you're doing. Those eyes are basically emotional warfare, and it's completely unfair." I observed from my concealed position behind a cluster of ice formations, my recording equipment capturing every word. This human had stumbled upon the cubs 3 hours ago, shortly after their birthgivers had fled during a territorial dispute. Standard Vorthani protocol dictated that abandoned cubs were a natural part of population control. Harsh, perhaps, but practical. Apparently, no one had explained practical to Hazel Patterson, age 28, according to her identification chip, and currently displaying behavior that defied every human stereotype in our databases. "You know," she continued, adjusting the jacket around the smallest cub, "back on Earth, my landlord won't even let me have a goldfish. 'No pets, Miss Patterson,' he says. 'Insurance liability, Miss Patterson.' And here I am, playing foster mom to 3. What are you guys anyway? You look like someone crossed a fox with a snow leopard and added way too much adorable." The cubs responded with sleepy purrs, apparently finding her voice soothing. I found it mildly irritating, not because it wasn't pleasant, but because it was forcing me to reconsider 17 years of research on human behavioral patterns. The temperature had dropped another 5 degrees since she'd found them. Any reasonable being would have abandoned the cubs and sought shelter. Instead, Hazel had removed her outer layer of clothing and wrapped it around creatures she'd never seen before. The logical part of my brain insisted this was aberrant behavior. The part that had been watching her for the past few hours wondered if maybe we'd been studying the wrong humans. "Okay, listen up, you 3, she said, her voice taking on what humans called a no-nonsense tone. "I don't know where your parents went, and honestly, based on the fact that they left you here in sub-zero temperatures, I'm not super impressed with their parenting skills. But here's the thing, I'm not exactly parent material either." She paused, looking down at the cubs with an expression I couldn't quite categorize. Fond exasperation, perhaps? "I burned toast. I killed a cactus, and that's supposedly impossible. Last week, I accidentally put salt in my coffee instead of sugar, and didn't notice until I'd finished the entire cup. My life is held together by caffeine, stubbornness, and a truly impressive collection of anxiety medication. And yet," she trailed off, gently stroking the fur of the largest cub. Its purring intensified. "And yet, here we are. Me, slowly freezing to death while playing babysitter to 3 alien puppies, kittens, cubs. Let's go with cubs. 3 alien cubs whose species I can't even pronounce, in a climate that's actively trying to kill us all, and somehow this feels like the most sensible thing I've done all year." I activated my emergency beacon, signaling the rescue team. Standard protocol dictated that I maintain observation distance, but if this human died from exposure while protecting Vorthani young, the diplomatic implications would be complicated. The cubs had begun making small mewling sounds, hunger cries. Hazel recognized them immediately, despite having no prior experience with Vorthani young. "Oh, you're hungry. Of course you're hungry," Because taking care of 3 abandoned alien babies in a frozen wasteland wasn't challenging enough without adding feeding schedules to the mix. She rummaged through her pack with one hand, keeping the other arm wrapped around the cubs. Her supplies were limited: standard human rations, water purification tablets, and what appeared to be an emergency beacon of her own. Let's see. I've got protein bars, dried fruit, and something labeled extreme survival paste that I'm pretty sure is actually just expensive cardboard. She held up each item, examining them with the critical eye of someone trying to determine if any of it was suitable for infant consumption. None of this screams appropriate baby food, does it? The smallest cub, the one she'd been paying extra attention to, let out a particularly pitiful whimper. Hazel's expression shifted to something between determination and mild panic. Okay, don't panic. Well, don't panic more than you already are, which is a lot. Think, Hazel. What do baby animals need? Milk. Do I have milk? Number. Do I have anything milk-like? Also number. Do I have any idea what alien babies can safely consume? That would be a hard no as well. She continued her inventory, talking to the cubs as if they could understand every word. Perhaps they could. Vorthani young developed linguistic comprehension remarkably early. Water. Everyone needs water, right? Even alien babies. Though I suppose the question is whether your species can process human purified water, or if I'm about to accidentally poison you. Which would be just perfect, because apparently my theme today is good intentions, catastrophic execution. Using the cap from her water bottle, she created a small drinking vessel and carefully held it near the largest cub's mouth. The little creature sniffed cautiously, then began to lap at the water with a tongue that was surprisingly similar to what humans called a cat tongue. Well, that's encouraging. You're not immediately dying from my water, so that's a win. Small victories, right? The other 2 cubs, seeing their sibling drinking, began making more insistent hunger sounds. Hazel quickly fashioned 2 more makeshift bowls and distributed water to all 3. There we go. Hydration achieved. Now, about actual food. She looked at her remaining supplies with growing concern. I don't suppose any of you are vegetarians, no? Carnivores then, which makes sense given the teeth. Very sharp teeth, I notice. Adorable but sharp. She broke off a small piece of protein bar and held it near the smallest cub's nose. The reaction was immediate and negative. The cub recoiled, making disgusted, chittering sounds that needed no translation. Right, so human food is a no-go, which leaves us with what, exactly? She looked around at the barren landscape. I don't see any alien vending machines out here. No convenient baby food for extraterrestrial species stores anywhere in sight. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Here was a human, a species we'd cataloged as fundamentally self-serving, sacrificing her own safety and resources for beings she had no biological imperative to protect. Meanwhile, the cub's own species had abandoned them without a second thought. You know what? Hazel said, her voice taking on a note of determination that I was beginning to recognize as distinctly dangerous. I may not know what you eat, but I know someone who might. And if they don't like it, well, tough. She activated her emergency beacon. The signal would be picked up by both human and Vorthani monitoring stations. Within hours, rescue teams from both species would converge on their location. The diplomatic complications alone would require months of negotiations. There, she said, settling back down with the cubs. Help is on the way. Probably. Hopefully. And if not, well, at least we'll all freeze together. There's something poetic about that, right? Human and aliens, united in mutually assured hypothermia. The cubs, oblivious to the bureaucratic nightmare they'd just triggered, snuggled closer to their improvised caretaker. The smallest one, the one Hazel had been most worried about, actually fell asleep, its tiny body relaxed and warm against her side. Oh, come on, she whispered, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. That's just unfair. You can't be that adorable and expect me to make rational decisions. This is emotional manipulation of the highest order. But she didn't move. Instead, she adjusted her position to better accommodate the sleeping cub. despite the fact that doing so exposed more of her own body to the cold. My mother always said I had a saving complex, she continued, apparently comfortable talking to her unconscious charges. Bring home every stray cat, try to fix everyone's problems, volunteer for way too many things because saying no makes me feel guilty. She said it would get me in trouble someday. She looked down at the cubs, then up at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. I don't think this is quite what she had in mind, but yeah, she was probably right. Though I have to say, if I'm going to get in trouble for my saving complex, this is definitely the most interesting way it's ever happened. How many people can say they became accidental foster parents to aliens? That's gotta be worth something, right? The wind picked up, and Hazel instinctively pulled the cubs closer. Her lips were beginning to turn blue, a sign of dangerous cold exposure in humans. Still, she made no move to reclaim her jacket. The thing is, she said, her voice quieter now, I know you don't understand what I'm saying, but I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Your parents might have left you here, and I don't pretend to understand why. Maybe it's cultural. Maybe it's practical. Maybe they had no choice. She paused, her breath forming larger clouds in the increasingly frigid air. But I do have a choice, and I'm choosing to stay right here until help arrives. For all of us. Because maybe I don't know much about being a parent, and maybe I'm completely unqualified for this, but I know what it feels like to be abandoned, and nobody, human, alien, or otherwise, should have to feel that way. The largest cub stirred, opening its dark eyes to look up at her. For a moment, they simply regarded each other. Two different species, bound together by circumstance and an inexplicable connection that transcended logic. Yeah, Hazel said softly. I see you too. In the distance, I detected the faint sound of approaching vehicles. The rescue teams were ahead of schedule. Soon this strange tableau would be disrupted, and the various authorities would take over. But for now, in this moment, there was only a human named Hazel Patterson, 3 abandoned Vorthani cubs, and a demonstration of interspecies compassion that would challenge everything we thought we knew about both our peoples. The cubs seemed to sense the approaching change. They huddled closer to their unlikely protector, instinctively understanding that she had chosen them when their own kind had not. Hear that? Hazel asked, tilting her head toward the sound of engines. Help's coming. I told you I'd figure something out. Granted, my solution was basically send up a flare and hope for the best. But hey, sometimes the simple plans work. She adjusted the jacket one final time, ensuring all 3 cubs were completely covered. Whatever happens next, I want you to remember something. You're not abandoned anymore. Someone fought for you. Someone stayed when everyone else left. And if that doesn't make you the 3 luckiest alien babies in the galaxy, I don't know what does. The sound of vehicles grew louder, and lights appeared on the horizon. The rescue was about to begin. But the real rescue, the one that mattered, had already happened hours ago, when a human named Hazel Patterson decided that 3 small lives were worth more than her own comfort. And somewhere in the growing darkness, 3 Vorthani cubs slept peacefully, wrapped in warmth and the knowledge that they were no longer alone. The first vehicle to arrive was human, a bulky transport that belched steam and made entirely too much noise for what should have been a stealth operation. Typical. Behind it came 3 sleek Vorthani gliders, their silent approach demonstrating the technological superiority my people preferred to maintain. I watched as uniformed figures emerged from both sets of vehicles, their body language already suggesting the territorial disputes that would inevitably follow. The humans moved with their characteristic blend of urgency and barely controlled chaos. The Vorthani maintained their usual air of calculated precision. Oh, wonderful, Hazel muttered, feeling the vibrations through the ground as the vehicles approached. Here comes the cavalry. Multiple cavalries, actually. This should be interesting. The cubs stirred at the sound of engines, but they didn't seem frightened. Instead, they pressed closer to Hazel, apparently having decided that she represented safety in an uncertain world. Smart cubs. The first human to reach them was a stocky man with graying hair, and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen too many emergencies. His uniform identified him as Commander Frank Morrison, head of the local Human Rescue Division. "Miss Patterson," he called out, jogging across the icy ground with the determined gait of someone who refused to acknowledge that he was too old for this kind of field work. "Are you injured? We received your distress signal approximately 2 hours ago." "I'm fine, Commander," Hazel replied, though her chattering teeth suggested otherwise. "Cold, but fine. These little ones, however, need immediate attention." Morrison stopped short when he saw the cubs, his expression shifting through several phases of confusion before settling on professional bewilderment. "Those are aliens." "Very observant," Hazel said dryly. "Yes, they're aliens. Specifically, they're alien babies who were abandoned here several hours ago. They need food, warmth, and probably medical attention." The Vorthani delegation arrived moments later, led by High Mediator Thais, a formidable female whose silver markings indicated advanced age and considerable authority. She approached with the measured steps of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. "Human," she addressed Hazel directly, ignoring Morrison entirely. "You have been caring for Vorthani young." "That's correct," Hazel replied, meeting Theis's gaze without flinching. "Someone had to." The tension in that simple exchange was palpable. Theis's eyes narrowed slightly, a sign of either anger or intense concentration among my people. "These cubs were abandoned according to natural law. Their birth-givers deemed them unfit for survival." "Their birth-givers were idiots," Hazel said flatly. Several of the Vorthani delegation hissed in outrage. Morrison took a step forward, probably preparing to apologize for his species' representative. But Hazel wasn't finished. "Look at them," she continued, adjusting her jacket so that all 3 cubs were visible. "They're healthy, alert, and perfectly capable of survival. The only thing wrong with them is that they were born to parents who decided abandonment was easier than responsibility." "You do not understand our ways," This said, her voice carrying the kind of cold authority that usually ended conversations. "You're right," Hazel agreed. "I don't understand a culture that leaves babies to freeze to death. Call me crazy, but where I come from, we have this radical concept called taking care of children." I found myself torn between professional fascination and personal admiration. This human was directly challenging a high mediator, something that would normally result in immediate diplomatic sanctions. Yet she did it while hypothermic and cradling 3 cubs that weren't even her species. Commander Morrison cleared his throat nervously. "Perhaps we should focus on getting everyone to safety first and sort out the political implications later." "An excellent suggestion," agreed Dr. Nolan Webb, the expedition's medical officer, who had been quietly examining Hazel from a distance. "Miss Patterson, you're showing early signs of severe hypothermia. We need to get you warmed up immediately." "The cubs first," Hazel said firmly. "They're smaller, which means they lose heat faster. Basic biology." Dr. Webb blinked, apparently surprised to find himself receiving a lecture on thermal dynamics from someone who was actively freezing. "Miss Patterson, you could suffer permanent damage if—" "The cubs first." Her tone brooked no argument. This watched this exchange with something that might have been curiosity. "You would risk your own health for young that are not your own?" "I already have," Hazel pointed out. "For the past 4 hours, actually. Why is everyone acting like this is some kind of revolutionary concept? They're babies. They needed help. I helped them. End of story." "But they are not human babies," one of the younger Vorthani officials interjected. "They offer you no genetic advantage, no tribal benefit, no logical reason for such sacrifice." Hazel stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, honey, you have so much to learn about humans." She struggled to her feet, still clutching the cubs to her chest. Dr. Webb immediately moved to support her, but she waved him off. "You want to know why I stayed? Why I risked hypothermia for 3 aliens I'd never met before? Because they needed someone to stay. Because they were scared and cold and alone, and I remember what that feels like. Because the universe is a big, scary, complicated place, and sometimes the only thing that makes sense is deciding to be the person who doesn't walk away." She looked directly at This. Your people abandoned them because they thought it was practical. My people would have done the same thing, probably. But here's the thing about humans that you obviously haven't figured out yet. We're really, really bad at being practical when it comes to protecting things that can't protect themselves. The smallest cub chose that moment to wake up, blinking sleepily at the crowd of adults surrounding them. It made a soft, questioning sound, then looked up at Hazel with complete trust. "Yeah, little one," she said softly. "These are the people who are going to take proper care of you. Finally." Thais stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "You speak as though you expect to simply hand them over and walk away." "That's exactly what I expect," Hazel replied. "I'm not their parent. I'm not qualified to raise alien children. I don't even know what they eat, remember? I couldn't let them die alone." "And if we were to say that you had interfered with natural selection? That your actions violated our cultural protocols?" Hazel's expression hardened. "Then I'd say your cultural protocols are garbage, and natural selection can kiss my frozen ass." The silence that followed was profound. Even the cubs seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. Then, unexpectedly, Thais began to laugh. It was a sound I'd rarely heard from a high mediator. A genuine expression of amusement that had nothing to do with diplomacy or politics. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human." "Probably both," Hazel admitted. "It's kind of my thing." Thais approached slowly, extending one clawed hand toward the cubs. They showed no fear, allowing her to gently stroke their fur. "These young ones seem quite attached to you." "They're just confused," Hazel said quickly. "I happened to be here when they needed someone. Once they're with proper caregivers—" "What if," Thais interrupted, "their proper caregiver is standing right here?" The implications of that statement hit everyone simultaneously. Morrison started to sputter something about diplomatic protocols. Dr. Webb began muttering about medical examinations and quarantine procedures. The junior Vorthani officials launched into rapid conversations in their native language. But Hazel just stared at this. "You can't be serious." "Our records indicate that you are unmarried, childless, and employed as a xenobiological researcher," Thais said calmly. "You have demonstrated not only the willingness, but the ability to care for Vorthani young under extreme circumstances. More importantly, they have bonded with you." "Bonded?" Hazel looked down at the cubs, who were indeed watching her with something that went beyond simple recognition. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means," I said, finally emerging from my hiding place, "that you have become their chosen family." Every weapon in the clearing immediately pointed in my direction. Apparently, nobody had expected additional Vorthani observers. "Stand down," Thais commanded, and the weapons lowered reluctantly. "This is Korveth, our xenobiological specialist. He has been documenting this encounter." "You've been watching us this whole time?" Hazel asked, not seeming particularly surprised or upset. "For the past 4 hours," I confirmed. "Your behavior has been illuminating." "I bet it has," she said dryly. "Let me guess. Humans aren't supposed to risk their lives for random alien babies?" "According to our research, no. Your species is categorized as primarily self-interested, with strong tribal affiliations, but limited cross-species empathy." Hazel snorted. "Your research needs work." "Indeed," Thais agreed. "Which brings us back to the matter of the cubs. Among our people, bonding is not a casual occurrence. Once established, it creates a permanent familial connection. These young ones have chosen you as their guardian." "But I don't know anything about raising alien children." "You will learn," Thais said simply. "We will teach you. It is unprecedented, but not unwelcome. Perhaps it is time our species learned from each other." Commander Morrison finally found his voice. "High Mediator, surely you can't be suggesting that a human civilian adopt alien children. The paperwork alone would take years, and the cultural implications will be handled by those far above your pay grade, Commander," Thais said smoothly. "Unless, of course, you wish to explain to your superiors why you prevented the first successful interspecies adoption in galactic history." Morrison's face went through several interesting color changes before settling on resigned acceptance. Dr. Webb, meanwhile, had been quietly running medical scans. Miss Patterson, your core temperature is dangerously low. We need to get you to a medical facility immediately. Fine, Hazel agreed, but the cubs come with me. All of them. Together. Of course, Thais said. A family should not be separated. As the medical team prepared transport, I found myself reconsidering everything I thought I knew about humans. This one individual had not only challenged our assumptions about her species, but had fundamentally altered the relationship between our peoples. The cubs, oblivious to the historical significance of their rescue, were finally beginning to show signs of hunger again. Hazel noticed immediately. They need food, she announced. Real food, not whatever improvised nonsense I was going to try. We have prepared formula in the medical transport, one of the Vorthani team members reported. Suitable for young cubs. Perfect, Hazel said, then looked down at her charges. Hear that, you three? Actual food, delivered by people who know what they're doing. About time. As they loaded everyone into the vehicles, I reflected on what I had witnessed. A human had found 3 abandoned cubs and had chosen compassion over logic, self-sacrifice over self-preservation. She had challenged authority, risked her life, and ultimately changed the course of interspecies relations. And she had done it all while complaining about the inconvenience. Perhaps that was the most human thing of all. Saving the day while being thoroughly annoyed about having to do it. The transport lifted off, carrying its unusual cargo toward the medical facilities. Inside, Hazel was finally allowing herself to be treated for hypothermia while keeping one eye on the cubs, who were eagerly consuming their first proper meal in hours. You know, she said to no one in particular, my mother is never going to believe this story. Dr. Webb adjusted the thermal blankets around her shoulders, shaking his head in professional disapproval. Miss Patterson, your body temperature dropped to dangerous levels. Another hour out there, and we might have been conducting a very different kind of rescue operation. But we didn't, Hazel replied pragmatically. Everyone's alive, everyone's warm, and these little ones are finally getting proper nutrition. I'd call that a successful outcome. Thais, who had chosen to accompany them in the human transport rather than her own vessel, observed the feeding process with obvious satisfaction. They consume the formula readily. This is an excellent sign for their long-term health prospects. Good, Hazel said, then frowned. Wait, what exactly does long-term mean for your species? How long do Vorthani live? What kind of lifespan am I looking at here? Approximately 150 of your years, Thais replied casually. Hazel's eyes widened. 150 years? Each? Is this problematic? Problematic? Hazel laughed, though it sounded slightly hysterical. I just accidentally adopted 3 children who are going to outlive me by decades. That's not problematic. That's actually kind of beautiful, in a terrifying, life-altering way. The largest cub finished its meal and crawled over to Hazel, curling up against her leg with a contented sigh. The other 2 quickly followed suit, creating a pile of silver fur and gentle purring sounds. They truly have chosen you, Thais observed. This level of immediate attachment is unprecedented. Usually Vorthani young require several weeks to bond with new caregivers. Maybe they can sense that I'm as clueless as they are, Hazel suggested. Shared confusion creates instant connections. Commander Morrison, who had been unusually quiet during the flight, finally spoke up. Miss Patterson, I have to ask, what are you planning to do about your current living situation? Your employment? Your entire life, really? Hazel considered this for a moment, gently stroking the sleeping cubs. Well, I suppose I'll have to make some adjustments. Find a bigger place, definitely. Learn about Vorthani child development. Figure out how to explain this to my boss. Your research position could be expanded, Thais suggested. A human raising Vorthani young would provide invaluable data for both our species. This arrangement could benefit everyone involved. You mean, I'd basically become a living experiment? Hazel asked. You would become a pioneer, Thais corrected. the first of your kind to truly understand ours from the inside. And we would learn what makes humans capable of such extraordinary compassion. Dr. Webb finished his examination and sat back with a satisfied expression. Your vital signs are stabilizing nicely. No signs of permanent damage from the cold exposure. You're remarkably resilient, Miss Patterson. I have to be, she replied, looking down at her sleeping charges. I'm apparently a mom now. Single mom to 3 alien babies with 15-decade lifespans. If that doesn't require resilience, nothing does. The transport began its descent toward the medical facility, and through the windows, both human and Vorthani ground crews could be seen preparing for their arrival. News crews were already setting up equipment, having somehow learned about the unprecedented rescue operation. Oh, wonderful, Hazel muttered, spotting the cameras. I look like I've been through a blizzard, which I have, and now I'm going to be on galactic news as crazy human lady adopts aliens. You will be remembered as the woman who changed everything, Thais said seriously. Today marks the beginning of a new era in human-Vorthani relations. These cubs will grow up as bridges between our worlds. No pressure there, Hazel said dryly. But her expression had grown thoughtful. You know what? Bring on the cameras. Let them see what happened here. Let them see that sometimes doing the right thing is really that simple. As the transport touched down, I prepared my final observations for the official record. What I had witnessed would be studied, analyzed, and debated for generations to come. But the essential truth was beautifully uncomplicated. When faced with beings in need, this human had chosen kindness over convenience, love over logic. The cubs, full and warm and safe, settled down for a proper sleep. Their chosen guardian watched over them with the fierce protectiveness that had already become legendary among both species. And somewhere in the official reports that would be filed about this incident, a new category would be created. Humans, dangerously compassionate. It was, I thought, probably the most accurate classification we had ever made.